Welcome back to this week's episode of the Seatown Podcast, where Seattle business owners, entrepreneurs, and community leaders are invited on to share their stories with us. I'm your host, Christian Harris. As the owner of an indie real estate brokerage here in Seattle, I'm naturally interested in various communities around Seattle and what makes each of them so unique and distinct. And local businesses and organizations play a large part in shaping the flavor and character of the neighborhoods that we love so much. So join me as we talk with these fascinating people and explore their stories of why they started their businesses, run their nonprofits, or otherwise are making an impact in the Seattle area. All right, today I'm joined by Matt Wendland, the owner of Burien Press and now the newly opened Moonshot Coffee in White Center. Thanks for joining me today, Matt. Appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, on this podcast, I like to kind of hear the story of business owners and, what motivated them to get started, what was challenging, where they're at now, that sort of thing. Could you just take a couple minutes to tell us kind of, what your businesses are all about and what got you into making coffee?
Yeah. So sometimes I think that everyone at some point in their life, or at least most people that I've talked to, say like, oh, I'd love to own a coffee shop one day, or a cafe one day, or something along those lines. And I think somehow I just kind of accidentally figured out how to get that started. Mm-hmm. And then I was in the door, so I realized I better figure this out and do it right. But really where I got interested in coffee as an industry is I was writing and doing some small business consulting, and naturally coffee shops were my office. Mm-hmm. And so I'd often find myself looking at the coffee shop and what was going on and analyzing it instead of actually doing whatever work I was in the coffee shop supposedly doing. Yeah. And so naturally I had a lot of opinions about how I could do it or how it should be done. Mm-hmm. And all of these things untested and unfounded. And but this coffee shop in Burien, we had this opportunity where we really saw that there was the potential for an opportunity there. It was already this community asset. Burien Press was this community asset. What I saw in Burien when it first opened was that people really rallied around it, and they needed this place to find purpose and identity and value. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a lot of great vision, and some great business owners around Seattle supported the opening of this business. And so I was a regular there for years, and my wife actually worked there. Catherine worked there when she was in college. Okay. So she commuted from Burien to UW, and she was in the GIS program there. But she would take the bus back to Burien and work at most days at like 4:00 until close. And so she worked there for years until she moved into her industry. But there were a lot of things that happened, and the business ended up slowing down, and it looked like there was an opportunity to maybe prevent it from closing. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of became very persistent in creating that possibility. And so we got the opportunity in 2014. We took it over January 1st and went in there. And I remember the first day we were open, I felt like we did the most business that could possibly be done in a coffee shop in a day. And now looking back, I'm like, we were barely like, there was like almost no one there. Yeah. But it felt like outrageous how much business we were doing. Mm-hmm. Mostly just because we didn't know what we were doing. Sure. And so what we started doing was just, we didn't really have any money to hire a bunch of employees or bring in a consultant or an outside set of eyes. Right. And so we just we had one employee, and he would work 40 hours a week. Most days he would open, and then I would close the shop every night, and on the weekends my wife and I would work open to close. Okay. And we just started breaking it down, and looking at what can we do to improve this, and what can we do to streamline this, and how can we make things better, and then really found that there's this, what I really discovered about coffee, and what's really inspiring to me about coffee is the conclusion I've come to is that coffee is one of the only things, at least the only thing I'm aware of, that can completely change people's lives, anyone that comes in contact with it. And so we just like, I feel like that sounds crazy when I say it, but what we have is like anyone can come into a shop and buy a $3 Americano, and that purchase can be an investment in providing livable wage jobs that are supporting families. We source, our vendors are all responsible employers. We use really fantastic dairies that have great farming practices. But then all the way down, our roaster, Olympia Coffee Roasting Company, they source coffee, and they in a way that is literally changing people's lives from the farming communities. And so I just don't know of anything else that you can go in and spend $3, and then that $3 together with everyone else's $3 can completely change people's lives.
Sure.
For me, really, I see our business as to make a positive impact on every person that comes in contact with it.
Okay. So obviously you we're kind of using coffee shops as a workspace for your prior business, and Catherine was working at Burien Press prior to you guys buying it. But what was kind of the big motivation for going from just taking those ideas to actually taking the plunge to buy and own a coffee shop?
What we really saw, the opportunity was it was something we had talked about for years, and we never saw a situation that was right. And I'd actually been in the process of looking at purchasing a coffee shop in Tacoma, and Tacoma's a city I really love, but but where we really wanted to be was in Burien. And a friend of mine who also owns a coffee shop told me, if you're going to do this, you need to be in it 100%. And to do that, you're going to need to be in a community that you love. Yeah. And so while I actually do love Tacoma, it's not where I'm spending my day-to-day.
Right.
And so I was very conflicted, because there was a coffee shop I really loved and a community that had been developed there. And that was already open. And so I didn't want to have some kind of negative impact on what was already established there.
Sure.
And really, like, even considering it really felt like something that was pretty, it just felt very arrogant to be thinking like, oh, I'm going to go take this on and whatever. But not that long after, it looked like there was going to be an opportunity for us to purchase it. And in a lot of ways, it was, looking back, I walked into it not even knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
But I knew that there was this unique thing that coffee did. What I really love is this idea of community centers where people find identity and find value.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. There's definitely a sense of community around coffee and places we go for food and drink. And
absolutely.
What would you say is most eye-opening about going from the I think things could be done differently or better to, okay, now I'm in it, now I've got to prove it or figure it out.
Yeah, so there's a number of like revelations I had right away. One was, how is it possible that we're doing the most business that could possibly be done in this place, and it's not making enough money to be sustainable? So that was like a big question. So I quickly realized we need to increase the capacity of what we're doing, and obviously we weren't doing the most business as possible. So really, what we want to do is just create a space for people, kind of a, I guess, a clearing.
Yeah.
That is there for people to fill what they're passionate about, and we've been able to become part of this community that's just full of really amazing, talented people that are up to something.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really fun, engaging and inspiring, and sometimes it's really hard because the reality is like we could do something that's much quicker and we could do something that's more streamlined, but it would be sterilizing and dehumanizing. And so it's tough because people are tough, and it's messy because
People are messy.
Life is messy.
Yeah.
People are messy.
Yeah.
And so in one sense, it's like, it feels like a slower way to go about business. But at the same time, I'm not interested in creating a conveyor belt for people to get their coffee. And really, I mean, we could get like set up an iPad and you could touch the screen and we could stick it through a window and you would get your coffee. But I don't.
You lose the experience and the connection.
Yeah, I love coffee, but a lot of coffee shop ownership is cleaning bathrooms and doing paperwork, and I don't need to clean bathrooms and paperwork if we're just trying to make a couple dollars. That's only inspiring to me. Like if we can creating good jobs and we're creating a space in a community and creating a place for people to go out and do all kinds of amazing things. Yeah. And there's just so much that goes into business and small business ownership, I think, especially because there's like, you kind of have to take on doing a lot of random things. Mm-hmm. And so as Catherine and I got into business, it really brought up a lot of questions in all of these different things. Like, what kind of employer do I want to be? And I've always known what kind of employer I want to be. I want to be an employer that, my employees like me and I'm nice to them and everything's great and everything's smooth, and that's the kind of employer I've always wanted to be. But the reality of what that looks like to be a nice person, or whatever that, really means, is pretty removed from that idea is very removed from the reality of business. Mm-hmm. And so I remember asking people, how do you, what's the kind of relationship you have with your employees, and how do you interact with them, and like, what's appropriate, and what's best practices or whatever. Sure. And it really came down, a lot of people said, you're the one taking the risk, you're the one sticking your neck out there, and employees are gonna want to, get whatever they can. So you have to watch out for that. And as our first employee is someone I went to, I've known since he was a toddler, and we just both happened to be here from Idaho. And so I'm taking this advice from people, and I'm looking at this guy that's working with us, and really working really hard, and making a lot of sacrifices. And that advice of us versus them is not connecting with my view of people and humanity. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this and trying things out, and testing out what works and what doesn't work with my old friend from Idaho. And thankfully he's still around and a great part of our community and team, and he was very gracious with me while I figured this out. Yeah. But what I really came to the conclusion of is that it takes something from everyone for this to work. And Ian, in this case, was investing a lot of time and energy and emotion and putting things on the line with us. And I can't imagine doing that for I was in this case I was thinking I can't imagine doing this for 10 years and then being done and having nothing to show for it, and maybe a lost friendship, or maybe a couple dollars more an hour. And the more I've been in business, the more I've seen that people want to work on something they believe in, and it's not very inspiring to be, here's your paycheck and don't call me outside of hours, or you got what you earned. Mm-hmm. And so what's been really powerful for us is to look at our staff as they're part of this team and this community, and they're building something. Yeah. And what I've really come to, where I've really settled, is a place of just being really inspired by them, because I can be there as much as I can. Mm-hmm. but they're the ones that are really defining the day in, the day out. In your experience, like you mentioned, like our staff is really friendly and, things are really streamlined. Well, you probably didn't see me over there analyzing and babysitting.
Sure. It takes a lot of work to get to that place.
Yeah, but it really comes down to like we have a really amazing staff that has invested time and energy and emotions and their talent into this. And so, both in Burien Press and now recently we've embarked on a new project in White Center called Moonshot Coffee. Both of these, at the foundation, the idea is that we're a canvas, or we're creating a space for people. And so we didn't name Moonshot Burien Press 2 or White Center Press or any of those things, because what we want is to create a space for the community in White Center. And so it's not about us, really. We are creating the space, but it's about that community and the community defining what it is, and not us like imposing this idea of what's cool or what they should like or who they should be on them.
Right. So how has your role at Burien Press and now Moonshot, how's that changed? I mean, are you behind the counter very much, or are you mostly just kind of doing the backroom stuff, the books and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's changed a lot, going from being on bar every day when we started to really now it's mostly what I do is I fill in, and if we book, rentals and stuff like that, I'll be on bar for those things and training. Okay. But primarily I see my role as making sure we're getting paperwork done, which is like a lot. Sure. And then doing scheduling, finances, and then just kind of I would say being an advocate for my staff, because stuff comes up, and trying to be there to support them.
Okay. What do you love most about what you do in your business?
Well, what I love about doing this business is I think we legitimately get to impact people's lives, and there's customers that have come in, and our interactions with them were really rough. They were struggling with something in the beginning, and it's not like we were able to like solve their problems or something like that. But there was a sense of like we've seen customers that have come in, and what I perceive, what I see with them is that like just having this interaction with people and having a community that knows who they are and what they're up to and values them. It really changes how they're interacting with the world. And so like that's inspiring to me, just to get to see people impacted that way. But also, with my employees and getting to be an advocate for them. And then I think go all the way to the opposite end of the supply line. And we work with Olympia Coffee Roasting Company because one, we think their coffee is delicious and that they do a great job. And the people that make up their company are just really wonderful people. They're friendly and engaging and inspiring. Yeah. But they also stand for something. They also work really hard to improve the industry and to improve the lives of people that are connected to it. Yeah. And I think the most obvious example of that is in Burundi, this country that sometimes it pops up on people's radars and sometimes it's not, but it's consistently one of the poorest countries in the world. It's 1, 2, or 3 a lot of times. And the coffee industry there, it was considered a pretty lowly position to be involved in coffee there. And a lot of the coffee trees there were just growing in people's yards and whatever, and people were grabbing coffee and trying to sell it. And I think it was not something that people were going to brag about buying, and it was not going to score high enough by coffee standards to be considered specialty coffee by any means. And so there was a group that came into Burundi, and for business, and at some point they made the choice to change how they were going to do business and start being advocating for people and supporting people there, and they started this project called the Long Miles Project. And this family, now years later, I really believe has been at the foundation of literally changing communities there. And so what that looks like is they started improving farming practices and supporting people and getting the resources they need, and connecting with roasters that were willing to make a commitment to buy coffee from an unknown, if they could get the scores high enough. And so we saw Olympia around the same time we started working with Olympia. They had made this commitment to the Long Miles Project and the people in Burundi, and they would purchase their coffee. And so the Long Miles Project has been working for a number of years, and I believe, if I'm remembering right, the year before we were purchasing Burundi coffee through the Long Miles Project, farmers there were making $50 a year. It's like hard to even imagine.
Sure.
And if I remember right, a few years later, the first harvest, coffee farmers were paid $500 on average for just that one harvest.
Yeah.
And so 10 times what they were used to making in a year. And that just came through changing practices and how they approached coffee. Additionally, in Burundi, another struggle that was really hurting coffee there's this defect called the Potato Defect, or something. It's caused by this beetle that's sometimes called like a potato bug or a potato beetle. It's not like what we know here in the States is a potato bug. Right. But it's just basically what they think happens is this beetle bores a little hole in the coffee cherry, and what the result is when you grind that coffee, it has this overwhelming starchiness that really it smells a lot like a potato. Okay. But it dominates. Like if you were to grind a 5-pound bag of coffee and there was one bean in the bag of coffee with the potato defect, it would ruin the 5 pounds. Okay. It's like completely overwhelming, like the senses. You can't taste anything but it, and you can't smell anything but that.
Potato coffee.
Yeah, it's not. I'm from Idaho, so you'd think that would be like something I would like, but it's not pleasant. Yeah. So the farmers in Burundi took this on, and what they started employing more people to try to figure out where, what was the kind of habitat that was like really causing these beetles or these bugs to thrive. And then they also took on sorting the coffee to make sure any beans they thought had the potato defect didn't make it through. And so, first year we had, it happened a number of times. And then now I think we're in our 4th year buying from Burundi, and it happens almost never. And, but the result of them taking that on is now there's a number of people in these villages around these farms being employed to sort coffee cherries. So now they're changing their local economy. So it's not just the farmers making 10 times more. Now there's something like maybe 40 people in a village are now being employed, or sure. These numbers are all based on different years, but you see people are literally their whole community is being changed. And so then a person might be able to purchase a goat, and now they're not foraging or hunting things that we wouldn't traditionally think would be hunted. Yeah. And they're not cutting things down that they need in their local environment, and they're milking goats, or they're eating goats, or they're using fertilizer from goats. And this has just completely changed how these people live their lives. Yeah. And it's not in a way of like a handout. It's not in a way of coming in and saving someone. It's these people have taken it on themselves and completely transformed their communities. And a person that comes into our shop and buys a $3 Americano is causing the matter of that. Yeah. So we can see that. What I see is, what's really inspiring to me, what I love about this is that every day we make coffee and we welcome people in, and we get to change people's lives. That could be from a conversation. It could be providing a space for you to work on your business or your relationships or figure something out. Or it could be, that we're using, great farms and roasting coffee roasting companies, or literally changing communities across the world. Yeah. And I just don't know of anything else that can do that but coffee.
Sure.
Like Moonshot, what I really want to do is I want to host this community that's already there. They're like, we didn't decide to open a coffee shop in White Center because we wanted to maybe we can make this a better place. We were approached with this opportunity to take over this space, and there already is there's amazing people there. There's people that are up to things there, and we want to be part of that. And so we're not there to change people. We're there to be supporting and empowering and doing whatever we can to be part of that community. And it's completely different than our community in Burien. And my wife and I live halfway in between, but it's we get to really be part of two communities.
When you're going through kind of that period of burnout, and what kind of got you through that place?
Well, first I had to acknowledge that there was I needed help. And I think that was the biggest thing is especially what we were talking about before in this me versus them mentality. It's also, I think, in that if you're going to participate in that, you also have to have some kind of super strength that you're the one person that can make it work, and the business would fail without you, and sure. This whole story. And so kind of trying to operate in that story that I already know how somehow. Sure.
That's a crushing weight, and
yeah, I already know
starts and ends with you.
Yeah, that I know everything that's going on. I know the best way to do it, and I just happened, I knew this from birth, and
sure.
I had to reject that mindset, and I never fully embraced it. I always was very conflicted with that, and I think that's part of the problem was that I was so conflicted in all of those things because it just didn't resonate with me. And so I was asking people I really respected. We have this amazing community in Burien, and I talked to a friend of mine who's a chiropractor, and really well known in the community. His name's Aaron Collins, and I just started asking him. He was really inspiring to me as a leader in the community, and so just asking him these questions and hearing from him about suggestions and kind of and just letting him be someone that cares. And so he gave me a lot of great advice. And a friend of mine, I went to another friend of mine named Gabriel Grant, and he's been this person that I've seen really rally communities and empower people. And he suggested doing these different courses and programs, and so I started taking these on, and one day I just had this experience where it just clicked, and I realized wait, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it this way? Right. And it was kind of a weird thing. It was just, but I realized oh yeah, I have this whole narrative and that I'm always thinking about on something, and then I have this other narrative I'm always it's always running in my head, and kind of taking on changing those things, and so in a way I actually think I kind of got spared the burnout, the classic burnout, or maybe I was just in a slow smoldering of burnout and
smoldering burnout.
Yeah, it was just it was just on my way. I feel really comfortable talking about this burnout or whatever, because people in the community around me were willing to invest in me to make a difference and stand for something. Yeah. And so I think why I think I'm really comfortable talking about it because I think we all need to accept that we have an impact on each other, and how we do business has an impact on our communities, and how we talk to and about our employees has an impact. Yeah. On not just employees, but their lives and how our customers see them and their communities and how their families are. And I definitely don't have like all the answers in all of this, but I do know that what I stand for is being responsible for how I'm going to be about people, and I hope that our business reflects that.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, you know, I learned pretty early on that like it's not going to get me anywhere to worry about what they're doing, and all we can do, Burien Press and Moonshot, is to kind of take on what we're going to do and try to do the best we can.
Sure.
And I think in our coffee industry, I've seen this shift over the last few years where people are really in it with this idea of like the better each of us does, the better we can all do.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's been amazing to be part of this like coffee community that people are supporting each other. Just right here in West Seattle, there's a great coffee shop called Sound and Fog, and I text with the owner like almost every day. You know, we'll be running things by each other. His name's Justin, and we'll be like texting, you know, random things about like it's silly. It's like we're talking about like refrigerators and or pastries or something. Yeah. And you know, it's like it's kind of funny to be outside and analyze my like relationship with Justin or other coffee shops in the city. Mm-hmm. But like for me, it's like this is going to change, you know, how our industry functions. And
sure.
And you know, I don't think it's like someone's you know, in Burien, or let's say at the airport, and they're thinking like, should I go to Burien Press or should I go to Visti in Fremont? Mm-hmm. I think they could go to both, or they could go to one now and one later, or, you know, like we're there sure. by the airport. But someone's not going to necessarily be like, well, I'm going to drive from Fremont to Burien when I could go to this amazing coffee shop, Visti, sure. in Fremont. Yeah. So it's like, what's the point of worrying when instead we can, like, you know, encourage and support it and empower each other and get to value what and experience what we're doing, each of us is doing. And so I've seen the coffee industry shift this way, and it's just like, it's really refreshing and amazing to get to be part of this, because we are changing, you know, because we're getting to become like better employers or better business owners, or people that are making a better product, or we're, you know, taking on things, and also just getting to make some delicious coffee. Yeah. Like, you know, and the thing that's really beautiful about coffee is like, when you're experiencing it on a level of like you know, experiencing it more than just trying to get caffeinated, mm-hmm. there are these like amazing elements about it, these different expressions, and how we make coffee is going to be different on this more subtle level than how Visti makes coffee, or how Sound and Fog makes coffee. And
so as we wrap up the interview, what if, you know, our listeners are interested in, you know, learning more about, you know, Burien Press or Moonshot Coffee, or, you know, contacting you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we have, you know, our websites and our social media. It's burienpress.com and moonshotcoffee.com. We're actually in the process of forming and trying to figure out how we do this. We're launching more of like a umbrella company called Wendland Company. Okay. And so that when that's all 100%, it'll be Wendland Co., which is WENDLANDCO. Okay. And then it's like on social media or .com. And you know, the other option is to come down to White Center or come over to Burien and come in and just say hi to us, and see if all my rambling is like, you know, actually results in anything delicious and interesting.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, for your time. I do appreciate it. It's interesting hearing the backstory, and definitely be down to get some delicious coffee in the near future.
I look forward to it. All right, thank you.
All right. That wraps up this week's episode. Make sure to check out our guest website, pay them a visit, and otherwise support what they're doing. If you have questions, know someone who should be a guest here, or has a story worth sharing, email me at christianharris@seatown.com. That's SEA-town.com. I would also be honored if you could go to iTunes and leave us a review and a nice 5-star rating. You can also find out more about me, how my real estate indie brokerage and our conventional approach can help you with your Seattle and East Side real estate needs, and other projects I'm working on by visiting seatown.com. That's SEA-town.com. Thanks for listening. Today's intro and outro music is courtesy of the Fascination Movement. You can find their albums in the iTunes Store. The Seatown Podcast creator and host is Christian Harris. You can listen to more episodes and find all our show notes on our website at seatownpodcast.com. That's sea-townpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in a week for our next episode. This has been a Seatown Media production.